Hello and welcome to Edmund's World of Tanks tutorial. I actually already made one of these and I lost the audio track 15 minutes in. So like 30 minutes of the entire video was just complete silence. So here I am doing it again. Now all my videos are just off the cuff, one take recordings. I do practice them a little bit, so just be prepared. This isn't going to be quite as smooth as perhaps some other stuff, but what it will be is a bit of fun. So, a lot of people ask me in VWC, like, oh, I tried to get into World of Tanks and it was awful, I had an awful experience. Or there's like, what's the fuss about World of Tanks, blah, blah, blah. Should I play World of Tanks? This is, these are the questions that I get within, the gaming communities which I'm a part of. And the answers are, yes, you should play World of Tanks, it's a lot of fun. But the newbie tiers, the low tiers, are horrible. They're really bad. So anyway, to get you started, you need to make an account. And when you make an account on the website, there are a couple of things which you can do. You can get a new starter code, which usually gives you about $10 or $15 worth of premium stuff. Or you can be referred by somebody. And I really recommend that you get referred by somebody, because when you play with them, you'll get a lot more experience points. So it's a bonus that you only get if you play with the person that referred you. So you've got to find someone to play with, but it's really worth doing. If you got no one to play with and you don't want to play with me for some reason, then you can just get one of these bonus codes that gives you a bit of premium currency or whatever. But premium currency and all that, it's not a big deal unless you sort of really get into World of Tanks. But we're gonna get onto that, like where you need that, when you don't need that, and all that kind of thing. So anyway, when you log in for the first time, your screen's going to look something like this. Now I've got tons of money and tons of stuff, but you'll have a tier 1 tank that looks exactly like this, with no equipment, no stuff at all, and the crew should be 100%. So, basically what most people do is they pick a tier 1 tank they like the look of, and then they hit the battle button. So we're going to battle in tier 1. Now, the biggest problem with World of Tanks is that the early tiers are horrible. They're really bad. And unfortunately, that is what people judge this game by, which means that a lot of people just don't get very far before they quit, and they've never really played the actual fun part of World of Tanks, which really, the game is fun around tier 4. Tier 5, Tier 6, Tier 7, in my opinion, are the most fun tiers, and people mostly play those tiers. And then the higher tiers, 8, 9 and 10, are also very fun in a different way, but they're a bit more competitive, and if you really, really like competitive play, that's where you want to be. It is difficult to stay in the highest tiers without premium accounts, because tanks get more expensive to repair and buy ammo for as you go up the tiers. So most people are just content to make money and play in 4, 5, 6 and 7, and that is really where you want to be. So anyway, as you can see, no one wants to play tier 1, no one, so we will be waiting a long time to get into a game. No, I mean, not a long time, but by World of Tanks standards, a long time. You can normally get a game in about 15 seconds, 20 seconds, but I have waited up to 3 minutes for a tier 1 game at times, and sometimes you even end up in a tier 1 game with bots, because there's no one else to play against. So the matchmaking server just puts whatever players there are in the game, and then they add a load of bots. If you get into a bot match, that's great, because bots play like garbage, so you can kill them, farm them really, really badly, and make yourself some good credits and experience to start with. So anyway, I'm just picking a tier 1 tank here at random. Well, not really at random, but it's the only one that I've got that's completely untouched. So this is as if it were a new account, so I'm going to play this one. I did have a couple of others, and they got used up in the previous video, which I lost the audio for. So this is my last attempt to get this right, which is what it is. So here we are, 2 minutes 15 seconds. We're still waiting. It's not the best. But you only really have to play 1 or 2 matches in tier 1 to get past it, and we will cover that after the match is over, presuming that the match begins, which it should do. So anyway, in the meantime, what I want to talk about, which I was going to move into sort of after the match, is when you move to tier 2, when you buy your first tank, you have to buy a crew that comes with it, and that crew is going to be like 50% skill. So here you go, you can see the game's loading and it's not even a full game. There are 4 spaces empty on each team because there are not enough people to fill in the game. The game has not resorted to adding bots, which is fine, and it looks like I'm pretty sure most of these players here are new players, but who knows, who knows. So anyway, we're going to play a game. This is Mines, which is probably one of the best maps for new players. And so basically most people's tier 1 experience is that they drive around looking for the enemy and suddenly they explode. And that's tier 1, 2 and 3 in a nutshell, because you will have players who have played World of Tanks for 7 or 8 years, and they will retrain highly skilled tier 10 crews down into low tier vehicles just to sort of bash new players. It's called seal clubbing, and it's not the best. And you just don't have the tools to deal with them, unfortunately. And there's too much of an advantage for having a good crew, especially at the lower tiers. But we will move into that sort of after the match. So I'm just driving towards the center of the map here. It looks like the rest of my team is doing the same. One guy is going down the right area. And this vehicle's pretty slow. A lot of the vehicles in tier 1 are not particularly quick, which is not helpful. This guy has stopped too early. I'm just going to see if I can try and get a shot at this guy. I can't obviously rely on new players to sort of do anything, so I'm going to do my best to try and carry this game. I'm just zooming in here to try and get a shot at this guy, but it looks like I can get one. Running in and exploding, and that is the general experience that people have, is that they run in and then they explode. Now I'm right clicking to auto lock this guy because I just want to shoot center mass, and I really don't care where my shell hits as long as it hits, because all tanks of this tier have basically G's for armor. And the holes will be added through the course of the match. So there's no point in trying to aim for any particular part of the tank. You just want to smack it somewhere. Now you see, I'm just getting hit and I can't see them at all. And the reason why I can't see them is because they're camping behind this bush up here in A4. And if they've got a good crew, like beyond the 100% crew, with the skills, you know, camouflage skills and spotting skills and all that kind of stuff, which no new player will ever have, then they're just going to see you know, long before you are able to see them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to disengage from this area because I am not going to beat the bush campers, and instead I am going to get positioned in this MS1 if I can. Once again, center mass, just wait for the aim. And he's still there. Just because he's disappeared doesn't mean that I can't shoot him. I'm pretty sure that he's still there. So I'm going to put some rounds in. If he's got any sense at all, he would have moved after being hit the first couple of times. Just cuddling like this. Oh yeah, look, I did hit. If I press the shift key, I can zoom in quickly, by the way. Just a little shortcut tip there. There he is. Come on, buddy. A high explosive round would be useful around about now because I would be able to just clip the side of him and it would do damage. But I just wanted to show you that you can just press the battle button. The tank has got the basic ammunition in it. You don't really need anything else. You can just play. Okay, this guy is still just camping behind this rock. And the problem is now is that the rest of my team is getting annihilated because they're new players, and I'm pretty sure that those couple of guys with clan tags hiding behind the bush in A4 will be good players. Just down here to, I don't know, maybe they've had some bad matches and they come down here to make themselves feel a bit better by killing new players, which is not the best. But anyway, don't let this put you off. As I said, you don't have to spend really any time in Tier 1. Once you play about 3 or 4 matches in Tier 1, you can move on from Tier 1 and never play Tier 1 ever again. So, we're kind of at an impasse here because I can't move up without risking my life. But what the hell, let's go for it. I don't have forever. What I'm going to try and do now is proximity spot him, or proxy spot him. And what that basically means is, within a range of about 25 to 30 meters, tanks are just automatically revealed, even through terrain. And so what you can do is you can get right next to somebody to reveal them, so that your teammates can then shoot them. You just kind of now wait for your teammate to engage. This tank does seem to have great gun elevation, so you might be able to get a clean shot. Oh well, never mind. Shot from the center area where there's no one watching. These guys here are just too far back to really achieve anything, unfortunately, and they're just going to get surrounded. I mean, you see, this guy was in a position where he could have supported me, which is fine, but the guy behind him is not really, I mean, he's just been sat there all game, and it's not really a useful position to be in, unless you're a higher level tank destroyer or something with really good sight. I mean, I say that, and he's getting loads of damage done because these guys are just sitting in the open, but in theory all they really have to do is to just drive down this road on this 5 line here and just come up to this rock and just come around behind him. But they seem to be choosing to just fight him in the open. But hey, it's a Tier 1 game and a lot of these players will actually beat you. It's not a surprise. They're not all experienced players down here to have a bash. Generally speaking, if they are down here to have a bash, they'll be in a lull tractor, as it's called, because it's the best Tier 1 vehicle, sort of generally speaking. So we're just waiting for this to end now. This is the lull tractor here. This guy in the red is driving the lull tractor. Well, not bad. This guy's, I mean, he's getting a big game in, I suppose. Ha! It's a bit bad to wish for your team to just hurry up and die so you can get to the garage, but it is what it is. He's playing really well, actually, to be fair, but he should have been in a more forward position to support his team. He could have always retreated back here as the match progressed. You know, even if you're a tank, so tank destroyers generally play in a way where you want them to be behind the front line and supporting, and they're good for camping in bushes and things. But you don't want to be camping at the back of the map the whole game because you're just not helping. Okay, so anyway, the match is over. We lost. Not a big deal. You will lose most of your early games. Pretty simple. So we got some experience here, 260 locked experience and 7,000 credits. So what you do now is, so you've played your first match, and if you click the research button, you will see that you can research things, whatever those things may be. So here I can research this gun for 80, and now it's unlocked, so I can upgrade to this gun if I so wanted to. I'm not going to. And then I can use my experience to unlock the next vehicle. Now, I don't actually have quite enough to unlock it, but I'm going to unlock it anyway using 50 free experience. Free experience is basically experience that you can use on any tank whatsoever. And this is what people use to bypass tiers 1, 2, and 3, is free experience. It's 5% of whatever EXP you earned locked EXP that's stuck on the tank that you played. So if you earn 1,000 EXP on a tank, you would get 50 free EXP. And so here comes the problem. So yep, you played tier 1, you buy your tier 2 vehicle, and the problem is you can't afford a good crew, generally speaking. So you have to go with the 50% crew. Now, a tank with a 50% crew is awful, really awful. And the problem is that crews take the same amount of experience to level up, whether they're at tier 10 or whether they're at tier 1. Now, Wargaming have said that in April 2018 they are going to change it so that your free crew is going to be 90%, your silver crew is going to be 95%, and your gold crew is going to be 100%. So you never, ever again have to deal with a 50% crew. Even 75% crew is pretty bad. And this is the problem. So people get into tier 2, which I just need to actually show you tier 2. So they get into tier 2, you know, they've got their new tier 2 vehicle, and it's got a 50% crew, and it's awful. And then they just get blown up over and over and over and over again. And it sucks. And then they go to tier 3 and they experience the same thing, and they go to tier 4 and they experience the same thing, and they just end up quitting. Because this game is very difficult to get started. Once you get going, it's a fantastic game. But the early game is really bad. Not gonna lie to you. So, is it worth getting past the early game? Absolutely, of course it is. How can you get past the early game without, you know, suffering through it? Well, the answer to that question is to play a heavy tank. So, basically, crew experience affects almost every aspect of the tank, but it does not affect armor. It does not affect hit points. It doesn't affect some other things, but these are the two key things that it doesn't affect. So, a heavy tank, like for example on the Russian line here, we have this Russian heavy line starting with the true heavies start at the KV1, which is tier 5. You know, if you have a 50% crew in this, it's not going to change the fact that it's an extremely heavily armored vehicle, and your key role in the battle is to use your heavy armor to basically gum up the enemy team, block them in, you know, brawl with them, get up close, try and put shots in them. But generally, it's to just proximity spot and soak up damage, and allow your tank destroyers and scouts and medium tanks to actually put shots in from a distance while you pin the enemy in place. And it can be a lot of fun to play a heavy tank. But, you know, you play this game, and there's all these tech trees that you can choose from, and the problem is, you know, some of these tech trees are just horrible for a new player. Like, to give you an example, this tank in the American tree, tank destroyer, the T-67, is one of the best, if not the best, tier 5 vehicle in the game. Not all tanks are created equal in World of Tanks. Some are fantastic, some are awful, some are just average. Because a lot of them are historically based, and so ones that are historically bad are actually bad. So the game balance is not, it's not great tier for tier. There are certain vehicles that just really are better than others, although tanks can have various roles. So, you know, certainly the T-67 is not the best in terms of absorbing damage or taking space, because it's a tank destroyer and a very, very, very soft one. But other than that, it's an amazing vehicle. And the thing is, I wouldn't recommend that a new player goes for it. You know, say, oh, Edmund said that the T-67 is the most powerful tier 5 vehicle in the game. It is, but it's very, 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 very dependent on your crew. So it's a tank that relies on its incredibly high damage per second gun, its ability to see and not be seen. It's the joke is that it has like a Romulan cloaking device, but your ability to see and not be seen is dramatically impacted by your crew. So if you have, you know, a full crew with various skills, this tank becomes amazing. But if you have a 50% crew, 75% crew, even 100% crew with no skills, this tank is a soft box that explodes the moment anyone sees it, and it makes a really huge difference. Really huge. And so, you know, I can't recommend that anybody gets into these kind of vehicles as their first set of vehicles, or their first line. So, with that said, what should you play? What should you do? Well, the answer is that there's only one heavy line that actually starts down in tier 4, and it is the British heavy line. So the British heavy line starts with the medium 1, which you will start with because it's obviously a tier 1 tank. You start with all the tier 1 vehicles, and once you've unlocked everything on them, and there is quite a bit to unlock on the British one, you can sell them and get rid of the crew if you so wish. Then you have the medium 2 and medium 3. These tanks are all garbage. They're horrible. They are boxes that explode. They have great guns, but that's the only good thing about them. Once you get to tier 4, the Matilda. So this is a heavily armoured heavy tank. It says it's a medium tank. Ignore that designation. It is a heavy tank. It has incredibly thick armour. And the thing is, you know, when you get this tank and you've only got like a 50% crew in it, that doesn't matter. It's not going to change the fact that this tank is extremely heavily armoured. The gun is incredibly accurate, and even with a 50% crew, the gun is still actually really accurate. The penetration on the standard round is great, and you never have to fire premium rounds in this vehicle because they're really not that much better. And this tank has no problems penetrating everything in tier 4, everything in tier 5. There are only limited tier 6 vehicles that would really test the penetration capability of the gun. So you're playing a tank where the fact that you haven't got any money to start with, you know, you haven't got much silver built up, you can't afford all the extra little bits of equipment, you can't afford any consumables, etc, etc. None of that matters really with the Matilda, because its role is to soak up damage, and in that role nothing changes. There's no way to improve or detract from that in terms of, you know, having the right crew, having the right equipment, etc, etc, etc. Your armor is what it is, your hit points are what they are, and they're not changed by you having or not having played the game for 7 years or whatever. So yeah, this is my general recommendation for new players, is to play heavies. So how do you play heavies? Well, playing heavies is pretty simple. So we're gonna do a battle in the Matilda now. On every map there's the sort of joke that Wargaming has 3 lanes. There's an open area where scouts and mediums and tank destroyers can try and get shots all over the map, but it's quite exposed. There's usually like an urban area which is good for brawling and flanking, and sort of medium tanks and some heavies like to be there, and tank destroyers sort of like to look down it, that kind of thing. And then there is like a trench or a corridor area where heavy tanks just push down, knowing that it's difficult for artillery to hit them, it's difficult to get a shot on them from a distance, so they can get up close and personal with whoever it is that they're fighting. And that's really what you want to look for in each map, is to look for that lane. And the easiest way to find it is to just see where the other heavy tanks are going. Just remember that your designation is one of a medium tank, so you are this 2-bar symbol, which means medium tank. The 3-bar bigger square is heavy tank, but you want to look for other heavy tanks because they're going to go the same kind of place. Now on this map, you know, it's once again following the three lanes sort of joke. The 4, 5 and 6 lines, which is these lines here, is the open area. The 1, 2 and 3 area is that urban area that I described, sort of good for every vehicle. And then this 9 and 0 line is the corridor. So we're going to go down the corridor now. And by the way, this tank is not fast. It is the number one detriment of this tank is that it takes an absolute age to get anywhere. But that said, so one thing that crew skill affects is the speed of your vehicle. I mean, don't ask me why it does, but it does. So this tank is not generally that much slower for having a terrible crew. still achieves 75-80% of its top speed without even having, you know, played any games in it and having a free crew. So a lot of light tanks, you know, they rely very heavily on their high speed, and having a bad crew means that the tank barely does, you know, if it's a 50% crew, you're barely doing 50% of your speed. In the Matilda, generally speaking, you tend to do 70 to 80% of your top speed, irrespective of your crew. So while it is a very slow vehicle, it's still gonna get to where it needs to be eventually. So you can see here, for whatever reason, we have a medium tank and a tank destroyer in the heavy line, which is unusual, but we're gonna go with it. And this Lush here is a really dangerous scout, which a lot of top players like to play, but not everyone in a Lush is a good player. A lot of people see people in Lushes playing well and then decide that they want to play one, but it actually takes quite a bit of skill to play it well. Okay, so we're coming up on the Churchill here, and the Churchill is the next, ironically, the next tank in the British line. So we are in a bottom tier game here, and what I mean by that is that tier 6 is the top tier for this game, and we are tier 4, so we're bottom tier. World of Tanks kind of does this thing where sometimes you're top tier, sometimes you're mid tier, sometimes you're bottom tier, sometimes you're same tier, which means that all the tanks are the same tier as you. And this happens because it just, you know, even a player who's not very good, if they're top tier, they can do well. And likewise, very good players, even when they're top tier, bottom tier, can still have a decent game when they're bottom tier in most vehicles. I mean, it's not always true. So I guess the real point is that sometimes it stacks the deck in your favor, sometimes it doesn't, and that deck stacking does help some players sort of have the odd great game. So here I am stuck fighting the Churchill, and he seems to know what he is doing, which is not helpful, but I'm going to kill him anyway. Like that. And the Lush died. He was going to be the next thing I went for. So the technique that I used there is called side scraping, which is basically I present the side of my tank and I roll out like that, and I just hope that he shoots the side and it bounces off, basically. If the angle of the shot coming in is steep enough, then the shot will not hit. So here we go, this tank destroyer is coming out, and he is... I don't think he realizes just how dangerous this vehicle is. Okay, can't really get a clean shot on him, but it's worth shooting at some people sometimes if you have a very rapid fire weapon like this one, because they panic, they think that you have a shot on them when perhaps you don't, and that can let you actually advance, whereas... So you see here, this tank destroyer is having to go at me, so what I'm doing now is I'm trying to wiggle around and just prevent him from getting a shot on me, and this guy is in here. From long distance you can use the auto-aimer to shoot at people. I'm not hitting them, despite having a green line, unfortunately for me. This Lush is bad news. I'm totally out in the open here and exposed, it's not the best. I should be aiming manually here, but you know, as a new player, you will auto-aim a lot, because it's helpful for stabilizing your gun on the target. So when you highlight an enemy vehicle, if you right-click, you can auto-aim at them, and by auto-aiming, you will your reticle will be center mass on their tank, and when you have so much penetration that any hit is going to go through, it can be a very, very useful technique just to get damage in at extremely long range instead of having to zoom in and place the shot. Now, unfortunately, we were never going to have like a massive game in tier 6 as a tier 4 vehicle, but this match is actually pretty close, which is quite interesting. So these are the artillery in the back here that are just engaging whatever they can see from a distance. We have a tank destroyer camping right at the back here, and this is bad play, basically. You should never be camping so far back that you can't support your team. And the real issue is, he's reached a point now where everyone can just surround him from all directions, which is what this scout is trying to do. Now, I mean, the enemy team is not exactly playing great either here, but a lot of tank destroyers, they could be contributing throughout the whole match, and they don't, and then they find themselves facing off against 3 or 4 enemy tanks. Whereas if they'd have been on the front line, I mean not on the front line, but just a bit behind the front line, they could have picked off a couple of tanks, done some extra damage, and then they can always retreat back to this position later if the front line collapses. And they could have gotten, instead of facing off against 2 or 3 tanks, they'd maybe be facing off against only 1 or 2, because they'd put that extra damage in. They had, prevented the enemy from getting a decisive victory on the front line, and thus having plenty of spare vehicles to throw at you towards the end of the match. But interestingly, it seems like our team is actually cleaning up a fair bit here, which is pretty good. So, yeah, not bad at all. This is a weak game for me. I mean, you want to average the kind of damage of your own vehicle's hit points. It's a good guide. So I have 370 hit points. I probably want to do about 370 damage, but I was really playing as a true heavy there in the tier 6 game, and in tier 6 the Matilda's armor does struggle a bit. I mean, we did block a lot of shots, but had this been a tier 4 game, tank destroyers and other vehicles would have really struggled to do any damage. And like I said before, irrespective of my crew, that armor is going to be as good as anybody else's who's driving a Matilda, whether they have a 6 skill crew that they brought down from tier 10 or a basic free one. Right, so we're just waiting for the artillery to be cleaned up here, which you should never underestimate artillery. I have seen it win tight games like this because they fire really big caliber, high explosive rounds, and if they catch your tank in just the right place and they penetrate, they can often one-shot a vehicle. And when they one-shot a vehicle, obviously that vehicle is immediately removed from the game. If there aren't many vehicles left, it can end up spiraling out of control, basically. All these artillery would have to do is land 1 or 2 good hits on each vehicle to destroy it. In fact, artillery can generally kill each other in one shot. And this the Stook here would be killed in one shot as well if the shot hit him perfectly. The medium tank, I think it would be a struggle for the artillery to kill it in one hit. They'd have to ammo rack it, but it is a possibility. So in a close game, don't think just because the artillery is very bad at close range that they can't kill you, because they can. Okay, so we're just cleaning up here. The griller is going to be put down. Yeah, there we go. So we're done. We won. Good game. In fact, this guy had a massive game. 7 kills. Jesus. But he was top tier. And really, his tank was fantastic for being top tier. And this is what World of Tanks does, is it gives you the big highs and the low lows. One match, you'll be bottom tier in a big way, and every tank will be tanks that are good against yours. And another match, you'll be top tier, and every tank will be the sort of tank that you're really good against. So anyway, just going back to the British heavy line, another reason why I recommend it is that it has every kind of heavy in the game. So the Matilda is a true heavy. True heavy means armor on the front, armor on the back, armor on the sides, armor everywhere. Every part of this tank is armored, top, middle, bottom, everywhere. I think like the thinnest part is 50 millimeters thick. So it's a true heavy, and it can take damage from all directions. Obviously, you don't want to present the sides to people. That's like broadsiding, because the side of the tank is still reasonably easy to penetrate. if it has no angle at all. But generally speaking, the armor is decent, is capable all around the tank. Then you get the Churchill. Now the Churchill is a side scraper, so what that means is that the sides of the tank are incredibly thickly armored. So what you want to do is you just sort of want to position this tank towards your enemy like this and present the side, and if they shoot the side, they're just not going to do any damage. This incredibly thick side armor with great flat sloping angling has been known to deflect. In training room exercises we have seen this deflect tier 8, tier 9, tier 10 tank shells that would instantly kill this tank, but they just can't get through that side armor, which is 88 millimeters thick. So even with just a bit of angling like this, you're probably looking at 200 millimeters of armor along the side. So this kind of tank is called a side scraper, and in terms of side scraping heavies, you really can't do much better than the Churchill. Moving on, we have more side scrapers, all based on the Churchill chassis. And then we have the hull down heavy. So a hull down heavy is where the turret is incredibly tough, but the body is quite soft. Now, looking at this tank, you can see here, these are the armor values on the right. We have 254 mils of armor on the front of the turret, but only 130 on the front of the body, and the sides and rear are all incredibly soft for tier 8. Now, there was a time when I just recommended that new players play this line, and they didn't bother going for the Carnarvon, the Conqueror, and the Super Conqueror because they're all garbage. Not to put too fine a point on it, and this Super Conqueror wasn't even a thing. It was a different vehicle here. It was the FV. But Wargaming had a look at it, they realised that these tanks were awful, and they buffed them, and now they're great hull-down tanks, with typical British high rate of fire, high DPM guns with great accuracy. So the whole line is actually pretty much worth playing. So yeah, World of Tanks is definitely worth getting into. You should play it. It's very simple to play. I would just say grind your way through these 3 tanks as quickly as you can. Understand that they're going to suck, understand that it's not going to be that great, but it's not going to take you that long. If you manage to get your hands on a premium day or anything like that, or you had like one of those account codes or whatever, even if you don't, even if there's just like a special event on or something, even if you have no bonuses at all, it's really not going to take more than 3 or 4 hours to get through these vehicles. And once you get to the Matilda, you'll have a proper vehicle that you can earn money in, earn credits in, and then you'll earn at least a reasonable amount of free experience points. And you can then move on from this position to, explore the other stuff, but still have vehicles that can earn you money, that's going to give you, that basic foundation to build on. It is unfortunate that a game that is such fun to play has such a terrible new starter experience. Now, as you play through matches and you get your Matilda and then you play a load of matches and that, I think a lot of the game basics you'll learn them as you go along. I don't really feel like you need to sit down and with somebody and explain everything to them. Just play the game in Tier 1, expect to be blown up a lot. Tier 2, expect to be blown up a lot. Tier 3 is going to be the worst part about it, because this tank is really, really bad. But once you get past that point and you get here, that's where World of Tanks really starts to actually become a great game. Now, just to close out on this, few rapid fire things I want to cover. Not all tanks are made equal, like I said before. Some tanks are great, some tanks are garbage. Do your research. This 82 is a fantastic heavily armored tank destroyer, for example. But, if you look at, say, something like the, where is the horrendous thing? The M3 Lee, this is one of the worst tanks in the game. It's horrible. Now, Wargaming have done a thing where if you do the tutorial, the in-game tutorial, they will unlock the first 3 tiers for you on one line of your choosing, and the lines that you can choose are all not good for a new player, honestly speaking. Now, I mean, one of the lines that you can choose to unlock is the M3 Lee line, and you could play the M3 Lee and just try and drag yourself through it and get to the tier 1 heavy, which is a true heavy. And in fact, a lot of the American heavies are true heavies with sort of some ability to side scrape. Their side armor, I wouldn't say is that great. The T29 is a fantastic hull down heavy, but I personally still recommend that you go down this British line just to start with. Have someone to play with. Get to that. Give the game a chance to that point, and you will really enjoy it. I promise you. Any questions, comments, etc. Just put them in the video comments, and I'll answer them there. Email me if you've got my email. Catch me on BWC, on TeamSpeak, the-bwc.com, and yeah, I'll catch you next time. I'm going to do some extra videos about the various techniques which I talked about briefly, the side scraping techniques, the hull down techniques, how to get the most out of those heavies, but this should get you started. I guess the key learning here is, yes, this is a good game, it is fun, you will enjoy it, it is free, there's no reason not to play it, but don't judge this game by the first 3 tiers. They are bad, they are so bad, they're not fun, you will explode a lot, it's not that great. Most players never play them again. Having played them the first time, they use their free experience to bypass them. That's how bad they are. But once you get to tier 4, tier 5, the game really opens up and it becomes really good. And if you wanted some advice for a second line after you're done with your Matilda, with your heavy line, I moved into other British vehicles just because when you unlock things on one set of vehicles, you end up unlocking engines and components on other stuff in the same nation. So it allows you to progress other tanks of the same nation quicker. Because originally I was playing between US and UK and like Russia, and then I just found that actually as you start unlocking stuff in one nation, it becomes much easier to unlock stuff on the rest of the nation's trees. But my girlfriend got into this, and she picked the Russian tank destroyer line, which she is now up to the Su-85, and she very much enjoys it. So if you wanted a recommendation from the girlfriend, this Russian tank destroyer line is good. And I guess it's because on the British line she liked that accurate high power gun, and the Russians have not got the most accurate guns, but they are high power, high pen guns, kind of kill them before they kill me kind of tanks. And I guess she likes that kind of gameplay. So everyone is different. Your second line, just pick something that looks fun, honestly. But starting the game, play heavies, learn the game as a heavy, and being a heavy, because you're slow, you know, you don't have to rush to the front line. No one expects you to do that. You don't have to know where to go, where to be, blah blah blah. Generally speaking, no one's going to sort of send you toxic messages. Although when I made the first instance of this video, someone actually sent me a load of toxic messages because they're like, why are you playing a tier 1? Look at your stats are really good, like you're a CL clubber, blah blah blah. I'm like, I'm making a newbie video. I'm like, you know, I'm doing a tutorial video, man. You're going to be internet famous. But he's not going to be internet famous because I lost the audio on that video, which is really the true tragedy here. And that is it. I will catch you guys next time, and drop me a line if you want to see any videos about any game or anything at all. I can make you a gaming video. I can show you what to do, how to play. Yeah, simple as that. Catch you next time.